And welcome into another edition of the Hustle Show podcast for this Hustle Short on Monday, October 2nd, here as we close out week 4 in the NFL. I'm Mark Zinno, joined by Adam Trigger. Make sure you guys check out the entire Hustle Show every Thursday night in its entirety, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Welcome in, Adam Trigger. Adam, great to be with you as always. Hope it was a profitable NFL Sunday for you.
I got to be honest, Mark. It was not, but it wasn't. I mean, it was just a Saturday and Sunday were arguably one of my worst Saturday Sunday like combos I can remember. Of course, kind of how it goes, Mark. Like you win 5 straight games, and then you can't just go 2-2. You got to give it all back. It's kind of where I was at overall. Now NFL this week was okay. 2-2. I won with the Lions and the Bills. I lost a tough overtime game with the Colts. And then I lost with the Falcons. We were just talking about them off air. And I have a play in tonight's game. So it's up on Wager Talk, 4% play for half off. And hopefully I can make it another profitable NFL week. And NFL's been really profitable for me, since coming to Wager Talk up. I think it's like 63 units of profit. That would be, going back 2.5 years. This will be my 3rd year on the site for NFL. And it's been pretty good, and we're ahead this year, so I really can't complain. But I had to at least call out the bad weekend because got to own up to the losses too.
Best of us, right? Yeah. All right. Monday night game here. Seattle at the New York Giants. Right now, I'm seeing Seattle -1.5. Some 2s starting to pop up. I even see a 2.5 out there on the Wager Talk odds screen. So total stuck right at 47, right on the number here. This line has sort of gone back and forth throughout the week leading up to this game here. The Giants are in a spot where it just feels like they need to play a better game. Other than 2 quarters against the Cardinals, the Giants have been resoundingly gotten their ass kicked for the other 10 quarters of football that they've played through 3 games. So it feels like a spot here where the Giants need to play a good game. I have a free play up on my page over at Sports Memo. It's also a client play for me, and I'll talk about it right now. When you look at this game here, one of the advantages that the Giants can take advantage is the bad Seattle pass defense. That's dead last in the NFL in pass defense, allowing 328 passing yards per game so far through the first 3 games. In week 1, Matt Stafford went 24 of 38 for 334 yards. In week 2, Jared Goff went 28 of 35 for 323 yards. And last week, Andy Dalton, yes, that Andy Dalton, 34 of 58 for 361 yards for the Carolina Panthers. So clearly, Seattle has a hard time stopping the pass. Now, how does that help the Giants? Well, Saquon Barkley, doubtful, likely not to play in here. So that puts it squarely on the shoulders of Daniel Jones, and he's going to be asked to carry this offense with his arm. His passing yards prop here, Trig, is at 231.5. Now, Jones went over this number against the Cardinals, but failed to do so against the Niners and Cowboys. Well, it's pretty safe to say that the Seattle defense is nowhere near the Niners and Cowboys. So this is an advantageous spot here for Daniel Jones to take advantage of a bad pass defense. The Giants have had 11 days to prepare for this contest since the last time they played was last Thursday night against the San Francisco 49ers. So they've had 11 days off, considered almost a full bye to get ready for this game. And you know that the Giants being at home on Monday night do not want to get embarrassed. They give the ball to Daniel Jones. Even though their wide receiving core isn't great, I think there's plenty here for the Giants to take advantage of, and Daniel Jones should do so and get over this 231.5 here tonight. So that's over up on my page at Sports Memo, at sam.buzz/MZ, the place to go. And of course, there are tons of deals going on right now all across Wager Talk and Sports Memo, and you guys can get a deal with me here. Let me just find the code. It's Zeno2. Give me a second here. This is bad. I should have had this up ahead of time, but I'm looking for it right now. Hold on. I'll find it. Anyway, Trig, I'll get it to you in a second. Give me your thoughts here tonight on the game.
Yeah, so, I'm going to try not to give away my play. That's obviously up on wagertalk.com. It's the only play I have up for sale today, so I won't go into the side, which it is on the side. As far as the total is concerned, I definitely could see points. You make a good point as far as Daniel Jones is concerned. I know that prop got hit with some sharp money against the 49ers, and he did not go over. So hard to argue with coming back and playing him over the total. On the other side, I mean, the Seahawks, I have to say, the one really thing that impressed me with them, I took a loss betting against them last week with the Panthers, but they're, they really moved the ball far more effective than I thought they would. And that's now kind of a couple times that they've done that this year. Obviously, their offense looked great against the Lions as well, winning that game in overtime. So I guess for a lean on the total, without giving away my, where I want to go with the side in this game, I think we could see points here. I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a higher scoring game on Monday Night Football.
That code Zeno20, $20 for a 7-day pass over at Sports Memo. And look, I don't tell people I said this out loud, even though this will be across the Wager Talk YouTube channel. There's an argument in my book. I'm not saying I would do it. There's an argument in my book to tease the Giants to 7.5 and take the total from 47 to the key number of 41. And 21-17 at least get you a push if it's a lower scoring game. So, 24-17, excuse me. Get you a push, at least if this thing is lower. I'm with you. I think it goes over. I think it clears to 47, to be honest with you. So I know people don't like to tease totals, but if I can get down to a key number like 41 in totals, I don't think it's a bad play.
Well, yeah, and Kelly, our co-host here on Hustle, Kelly Stewart, kind of tweeted out earlier today. She tweeted out earlier today, though, like, hey, if you like the Giants, just tease it to something next week. That was something I used to do years ago for my clients. And I kind of stopped giving teasers for clients because it's just, it depending on what book you have, I know people will play them at bad vig, -130, -140, and which is what some books are doing these days. And I just don't want clients to do that. So I've kind of eliminated teasers from, like making like client play status. But I used to do this all the time. Like if you like the Giants here, it's a good teaser leg in the respect that you can take it across all the key numbers up to 7.5 or up to 8. Just look ahead and find one for next week, because if it does get home, you could be sitting there next week with a great number in a game that you might end up really liking, or you might not, but you still have a good number and a good teaser leg in it. And it's Monday, so a lot of these sort of advantageous teaser legs that start to get hit and then move out of range for you to play them at least in a plus EV manner, you'd have locked one in. So if I just look into next week, since we're going to start talking about next week,
great one for you. The best one I see on the board probably is the New York Jets from 2.5 to 8.5.
That's a great. No, that's where I was going with that. And like I said, if you like the Jets, throw them in there because A, that it fits, and B, that number, who knows how long that'll be there, how long that 2.5 will be there. This is the game I wanted to talk about, Mark, because interestingly enough, like I'm not going to lay 2.5 here with the Broncos, but so for me, I like the Broncos, all things considered here. I think it's a good spot for them at home. Let's rewind to opening week, right? Like you have the Jets come and play the Bills on Monday Night Football, max effort type game. They get the win in overtime, and they come out the next week and just get smacked, lifeless on the road. Like, just not a great performance. And you have to wonder if, they kind of maxed out on effort in that Monday night game and then just didn't have enough to go on the road and get a win. I feel like a little of that plays here. Now, they didn't win last night against the Chiefs, but they certainly gave an effort good enough to win. I would even argue that they maybe deserve better in that game. Think a couple calls went against them that were a little bit harsh, but like for whatever, they end up falling just short. But now they have to turn around, go on the road. And my overwhelming thought with the Jets here is, can they fully take advantage of Denver's terrible defense? And I think my answer is no. And that's what would tilt me toward the Broncos side. Denver, their defense was, horrific against the Dolphins, give up 70 points. I believe that put them at dead last. And even though they got the win last week, they didn't do much to sort of change that defensive standing, giving up 28 points to the Bears. Now, as good as Zach Wilson was, he gets a lot of praise from last night, and he got hot there for a minute and made some really good throws. Went from looking totally inept, down 17-0, to bringing his team all the way back to tied in the game. Can he do that again enough to take advantage of Denver's defense? And my lean would be no. And not to mention, he's still, as good as he played, makes the costly error that ultimately, gave the ball back to Kansas City and let them, sort of milk out the clock. So I have no real desire to back the Jets in this game. If anything, I'd go against them. It's not something I've gotten to the window with yet, but I still think the Broncos are better than we've seen. They finally showed it in the second half last week. And, go back to that first game of the year. Jerry Jeudy plays, they probably win. They certainly played good enough offensively to beat the Commanders. I'm still sort of in awe that they blew an 18-point lead to that Commanders team. And then, of course, the Dolphins, I think we talked about that game on this show. They still had to go to South Beach to play a very good offensive team. And I think they just got lit up and they gave up a little bit. So right now, for me, the Broncos are the more undervalued side of these two. I don't think there is a huge difference between these two teams. And if you put the Jets in the role of just gave a heck of an effort on Sunday Night Football, now have to turn around and go play in altitude, I think all of those dynamics sort of favor the Broncos. And the Broncos are still a team that I think is getting better. So I lean toward the Broncos here. But Mark, again, if this is what I'm talking about, if you like the Jets right now enough, I don't hate that as a teaser leg because it fits. And you could always come back and bet the Broncos for a middle, especially if the Broncos or if the Jets take money like I think they're going to. And suddenly you're getting, you can take a cheap Broncos money line and have like an 8-point middle. So those are things that you can kind of look at, as far as different ways to play the teaser market and get involved. But just, I like the Broncos in this game, but I wouldn't talk you off of a teaser toward the Jets.
Yeah, going to be a very interesting game to see how the Jets respond and see if Zach Wilson can duplicate good games back to back, which I don't know that we've seen from him yet in his NFL career, in his short NFL career. All right, since you and I are together here on this Monday, you and I always discuss Survivor for last week. I took it in the you-know-whats. The Saints were just awful last week. That was the one pick that I was kind of looking for, as you talk about, Trig. You got to zig when everybody else zags, and I zigzagged too much and ended up with a bad team and a bad number. They probably should have started Jameis Winston, but that's neither here nor there. Much different sort of component this week with a lot of different games out there. And, I know we don't like to take teams on the road. In Survivor, I wouldn't advocate for it either. But I kind of feel like, obviously people will look to Washington because they're playing Chicago, right? We talked about Washington in week 1. We got away with a win there. So for argument's sake, you followed us in week 1 and you used Washington. They're not available anymore. This week kind of feels like the week it's either the Lions or the Dolphins for me. I know there's nothing really sexy about either one of them, but, and if you really want to get gross, I know you don't take underdogs either, but how are we not betting the Cardinals this week, period? Why are the Bengals favored? Like, I feel like the Cardinals might be a sneaky good spot there. But for me, from a Survivor standpoint, Trig, I look at Lions and Dolphins near the top of my choices.
Mark, someone commented on our clip from last week, and I want to sort of address the whole zig when other people zag theory. It's you don't always have to do it, and it's not always the right move to do it. It's just typically in Survivor, at some point you're going to need to take a stand somewhere, right? Like, you're probably not going to get by just taking the biggest favorite every single week. And the reason for that is not because of the whole, like, oh, well, everyone's on them thing. It's because you're going to get to the point of Survivors to get to the end, and you need some of those teams left at the end. So it's like, that's why you got to zig when other people zag sometimes, because you want to get to the end of the season and still have teams that you can use. You want to still have the 10-point favorite in week 15, or you're probably not going to win Survivor. And the way to do that is to try to identify good spots to do it in the early going. So that's like, I want to clarify that. It's really important because, like, going total contrarian is not going to win you Survivor either. I came on this last week and said, listen, this is the week to use. Yeah. 49ers. It's the bet. And I think what it comes down to, Mark, is you want to try to use teams in optimal spots, not necessarily like, so if it's the best possible spot to use that team, it doesn't matter if everyone's going to be on them, because you know what? Like, all you're trying to do is get to the end. It really shouldn't matter who else uses the team. It's just, is it the most optimal spot to use that team? Now, it leads into the conversation for this week. I have zero desire to use the Commanders this week. I felt like the optimal spot to use them was against the Cardinals, as you already sort of, we gave it out on the show. It got by. For me, there's no way I'm using the Commanders this week. The Bears showed life last week against the Broncos. They led big in that game. some would say they probably deserve to win, and or at least they blew a win. Now, like, the Commanders gave a max effort against the Eagles, come up short in overtime. I thought they might have went for two and went for the win in that
I
game,
would have.
and now they've
Yeah,
got to
they
turn.
should have.
Yeah,
100% they should have.
and now they've
One time Ron Rivera decides not to gamble was head scratch. I mean, I had the Commanders plus 8.5. I didn't care. I was plenty happy.
yeah.
And he got the opening kickoff in overtime, so you could argue that he played it correctly. But nonetheless, that's you don't play for the tie on the road.
Yeah, I mean, so just to kind of circle back to touch on two things, it's like for me, I have no interest in the Commanders and I have no interest in the Bengals. I agree with you. The Bengals are they're too flawed right now. I'm not saying they don't go and potentially win that game, but the Cardinals, even in their loss to the 49ers, which I used every single survivor selection on the 49ers that I still had available. I don't always condone that, but I really felt like it was such an advantageous position for them. Even in the loss, they still did some good things, and they did good enough. What I saw was good enough where I'd have no interest in taking the Bengals on the road this week. So if to tie this in full circle, if you eliminate the Bengals and you have no interest in the Commanders, which I don't, not to mention I've used them on I think two of my entries already that are still existing in Circa Survivor, then yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm coming up with the Lions and the Dolphins. And if I had to pick one, remember, guys, if you're playing in Circa Survivor, the big pool that we sort of talk about on this show, because we just assume most people are watching or playing in Circa Survivor, the Dolphins might be one you want to save, right? Because that Black Friday game is part of Thanksgiving week. So if you are trying to like look ahead and put yourself in position for the holidays, and maybe you want to use the Cowboys somewhere else, remember the Dolphins-Jets game on Friday is part of that Thanksgiving Day holiday as far as Survivor's concerned. And the Dolphins, I would imagine they end up being a reasonable favorite against the Jets there. So for me, if I had to pick between the two right now, I think it's the Lions, especially if Bryce Young plays. I said on this, on programming for the last couple weeks, I really prefer the Panthers with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Now, I think Bryce Young, long term, he's probably the better option because he gets to take his lumps and learn on the fly. But I don't think he gives them the best chance to win right now. And so for that reason, I would have no problem with the Lions. And the Panthers, their strength is defensively. And I just don't think that they're going to win that battle either, because the Lions have a great offensive line. They're doing, I would almost say the Lions, when healthy, have a very elite offense. And we certainly saw that against the Packers last week. And you throw in some extra time to prepare there. So I agree with you, Mark. Lions and Dolphins both look appealing. For me, Lions the more appealing and probably most appealing survivor selection of this week.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think you need to overthink it at this point. I would add, too, for that, Lions always play on Thanksgiving. So that's also another option for that entire weekend, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, both of these teams. So if you're using one now, it's probably best to look at the schedule and see. I forget who the Lions play on Thanksgiving this year. But, point simply being that if you don't feel 100%, great about the Dolphins or the Lions, either one, just look at their matchup on Thanksgiving and you should get a good idea of, and I'm looking at it right now here, Trig, it looks like they get the Packers. So,
and I think, and here's the thing. The other thing is too, I think this is like a mistake people make each year in this contest. You don't need to pinpoint yourself. You don't need to cross teams off your list and say, okay, I've got to save this team for the holiday
this week.
Right. Because I think a lot of people do that. And it's just, you need to make sure you have a reasonable option available for the holiday week. It does not need to be the odds on best option. I mean, it's nice if the chips fall that way, but you can win this competition without having the absolute best option on the holiday. You just need to make sure you get there with a playable option. You don't want to get there on Thanksgiving and all of a sudden have 4 underdogs and need to choose an underdog, right? You want to just make sure you have a option. And so that's why I think people make the mistake last week. I think some people made the mistake of not using the 49ers in just an absolute layup position because they were saving them for potentially Thanksgiving or Christmas. And it's you got to get there first. So as long as you leave a playable option, it's fine. And I would strongly suggest not, keeping yourself off of a team in like a home run spot just because they play on a holiday.
And remember, those holiday games are national TV games. They're usually good matchups between evenly matched teams because the NFL knows they'll have all the eyeballs on those days. So it's never going to be an easy one. All right, that'll do it for us here on this Hustle Short on Monday, October 2nd. Again, full show every Thursday, 7 p.m. right here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Make sure you guys follow at Hustle Show Pod on X, Twitter, whatever you call it, at Hustle Score Pod _ on Instagram as well. Follow Adam Trigger at Top Flight SI. Follow me at Mark Zinno, MarkZinno. So for Adam Trigger, I'm Mark Zinno. Make sure you guys go enjoy Monday Night Football. Smash that like button right on the Wager Talk YouTube channel that we have here. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a great night. Enjoy Monday Night Football.